Hey everybody, Marcy here, and welcome to my craft room. Today I am going to dive into this challenge that was sent to me by Lara Fuller at Lara Fuller Earth and Art. And Lara sent me a challenge a few weeks ago. I just haven't had time, it just kind of came between things, so I haven't had time to really work on it yet. And I also just wanted to give it some thought. So Lara has sent me the beginnings of a well-being journal, and I will link the video down below where I kind of talked about that. I'm also going to link Lara's channel down below for you to go check her out, but she does art well-being videos and teaches classes where she lives and things, so this was very fun. Now admittedly, I wasn't quite sure how to approach this project because I've never done art for well-being purposes, but I'm going to be stretching myself. She sent me this challenge, and so I began to investigate a little bit and see what is this all about. And then I got really excited because you can use all kinds of things in these well-being journals that just kind of speak to who you are and the kinds of things that you like, and I began to get very excited about this project. As I was mulling it over, I decided to peel back the layers of the original me OG. She gave me 4 categories that she wants me to use, and I'll go through them here. This is the first category, and it is happiness. So this says happy here. So she sent me 1 page for each section. The next section was celebration, and there's a picture of her and her husband celebrating. The next section was love, L-O-V-E, right here. And this is the page that she made for that. Oh, excuse me, I bumped the table. Oh, and it's Lara. Happens to all of us, doesn't it? It's upside down on the back. So what I may do is just decide which way I want it to go. I might turn it around, we'll see. And then the last one was unity. So this page is unity, and there's 2 people hugging right there. See? Very cool. And then she sent me an extra page, which I am going to use for the back cover. And these are excellent examples of the kind of work that she does. So I hope you guys go check her out and check out her channel, watch her videos. They are not nearly as long as mine. And she enjoys teaching art well-being and the principles and how to just put things together and making projects. She does a lot of other crafting as well. So please go check out Lara's channel. At the end of this video today, I'm going to share with you a little bit more about our Alaskan cruise, our little vacation. I've got a couple of really fun little video clips and just kind of give you a recap and share with you what we did. So today I wanted to really focus on happiness. That was the first one, and that's where I came up with the idea of just let's get back to who am I? Who was I before I was a mom, before I was a wife, just growing up, just me, raw, unedited me. Who was I? What did I like? What did I enjoy? What things made me happy? So go ahead and get yourselves comfy, and then we will look into this a little bit further right after this. All right, so I thought I would just recap again those 4 sections that she's challenging me with. Happiness, celebration, I'm writing very quickly, love, unity. These are the 4 sections, and so I'm just going to divide it up into those. Today we're focusing on happiness, and so I sat down and thought about some of the things that as a person just growing up as a kid, what really made me happy, and these are the same things hopefully that still make me happy today. So the first thing, definitely, it was always reading and books. I took to reading like ducks take to water, and I just took off, and I really don't remember not reading. I mean, I know I learned it in 1st grade because I remember learning it in 1st grade, but from that point forward, it's always been books. The next thing that really has always kind of made me happy, and I've always been interested in, I'm calling old things, which is like vintage or antiques or history, things that have to do with history, any of those kinds of things. Also why we love our junk journals, because I think that maybe all of you feel a little bit the same, that you have that love of old things that endure, that are quality. The next thing, as I already mentioned, is travel. Music, I've always been, I used to sing myself to sleep at night when I was a little kid. I've always liked to sing. Music has been a major part of my life. More recently, my voice is trashed, so I don't sing much anymore, but I'm still a very musical person. The next section I am putting in here, when I was young, I first started my creative journey with cooking and sewing, primarily in 4-H at age 9. And I'm going to just expand that to just saying that I like to express my creativity. I also enjoyed taking pictures and having a photograph album when I was little. I collected postcards. I took classes at the art gallery a couple different summers. So I did pottery, tried to learn how to draw, did some different things. Just thinking back to all of the projects that really interested me in school, there was one where we made paper mache Halloween masks. We enlarged a ginormous balloon and we did a paper mache thing and had to like make a face, and then we got to wear it for Halloween. And then another one, kindergarten, we made little bowls. We made art out of sawdust and glue, and then we got to paint it, and I was so proud of that little thing. I think I finally threw it away. I don't think my mom still has it. So I put it in a little box with the things I made in pottery, and then was very upset that my mom wouldn't serve us dinner on these things. But you know, you go back and look at your childhood art, and obviously it's not. Definitely not a budding pottist. I don't know what you call yourself. Potter, not a budding potter. School and office supplies. Have always loved that. Always. Have always loved that. Even when I was going to school, some of my most favorite times were when we would go to the grocery store and we had those little boxes, like a cigar box that just opened up, and it delighted me so much to pick out my pencils, my eraser, you know, all the little things that had to go in there, my glue, and just have it all in that little box. I just absolutely love the school supply aisle at Buttrey's on an August afternoon before school started. Then the last thing is Christmas. I've always enjoyed Christmas time, Christmas everything. Even as a child, Christmas has made me happy. So these are the things, as I went through all of my stash to try to figure out what to put in here, these are the things that I picked out with these ideas in mind, because these are still true of me today. So I'm going to put that list aside. I'm going to talk to you about what I picked out very quickly. So because I am a highly tactile person, you're going to see a lot of tactile things in here. I watched a video by a lady named Ashley Murphy, and I will also link that below, because even though it's 4 years old, she's not a big channel, but she was putting together a journal, and I liked kind of the idea of what she was putting in there, and that's kind of what got me really the ball rolling in my mind. And I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I can be more tactile. It's going to be more chunky. It's going to be like those books when you were a kid and you could tie things or use the zippers or button, all those things, you know, where they were just interactive. That's kind of what this is going to be. So there's going to be a lot of texture in it. I had another thought and it left me. Anyway, so I picked out this little piece of scrapbook paper. Sadly, it's only one-sided, so I don't know if it'll be a page or a pocket, but it's kind of representative of when I was a kid doing the sewing. I always like to pick out the little calicos and flowery prints. So there's that. This came from a different little scrapbook pad, and I don't know if you can tell, but it is textured. There's a texture to it. And then I also grabbed this denim pad. Now all of these things that you're seeing are old. I've had them for a while. I picked this out because it's denim, so it kind of combines my sewing and my childhood and all the things that I did, you know, running around in jeans. So I thought I would look through here real fast and see if there's one that jumps out at me. see, they're really cool. They're textured and they may even be adhesive. Are these adhesive? They kind of feel like they are. I guess we'll find out. I can turn it into a pocket or just leave it as a page. So something like either this or this stripe, because when I was little, you know, it was the 70s and all the jeans had designs on them. The one pair I particularly loved had this red and white stripe. Really cool. Loved those pants. And then when I got too tall, we cut them into shorts. So that kind of makes me think of that. Or cute little denim. I think I'm going to go with the pink and navy stripe. Okay, the next thing, remember this from our more recent project, my last Roxy's Weekly Challenge. Well, I put it in here because of the crinkle. And one of my favorite things to do when I was little in the fall was to walk along and crunch the leaves under my feet. So I've got a couple of leaves here, and this is going to represent crunching leaves under my feet. Put that aside. I've got this one also textured, and this is some of the packaging that Celeste from Woodland Inspired sends in her orders, and it has poinsettias on it. She's run it through the embosser, so I will be inking that up because it represents Christmas and texture and tactile things to me. I'm gonna just lay these aside like that. I've just got a big envelope because it represents the office supply lover in me. Same with this tabbed index divider. I also, to incorporate the cooking and the 4-H, because I mean, up until recently, I actually did enjoy cooking. But I picked these out because this is from an old cookbook, and this is representative of the type of things I used to make. Cookies most of the time. Here's an apple cake. This came in a pack I ordered from Etsy. Then this is an old Betty Crocker cookbook page. I like the color from it, and it's while we didn't have like little teas and things growing up, I just think all the color and the style and everything, the fact that these are sandwiches, is somewhat overall representative of my childhood. And because it came from an old Betty Crocker, that was my mom's, not Betty Crocker, the Better Homes and Gardens with the red, you know, the red checkered front. My mom has one of those, and that's what we always used. That and the cookie book. So we're always cooking out of those two cookbooks. So that's what this page here represents that to me. And then again, I told you I was musical. I have another music page in here. So because also I grew up in church, singing hymns was a very popular thing to do. One of the things that I enjoyed doing, but I have sung all kinds of music. I like this because it's from a gospel book. It's green, but especially on the back. As a kid in Sunday school, we sang this song a lot. So I won't break into song for you. Nobody needs to hear that right now. But I picked that one out to represent music, and then childhood favorites from the hymnal. And then reading. Since I was a big reader, I found I pulled out some book pages from my stash, and these are mostly classic books that I read a lot as a child. I read all kinds of stuff, tons of stuff, constantly reading. But here's a page from Alice in Wonderland. This is just kind of a blank page from C.S. Lewis, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I didn't pick one with a picture for some reason on that. Wilbur loved Charlotte's Web, so here's a page from that. Here is a page from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and this is quintessential Lucy with the lamppost walking through the wardrobe into Narnia. And then I have some of these random pages that weren't good enough to put in journals, but I've set them aside and kind of representative of children's readers and maybe some of the things that I would be doing when I was a kid. So down our street, definitely loved to ride my bike. I bought my first bike myself for 20 bucks from my friend and I saved up for that sucker. Dolls, loved my doll collection when I was little. And then this one's a little beat up. We're gonna have to give it some love, but in the park, playing. We like to play in the water. We didn't go to the park a lot, but we did play in the water a lot. We ran through the hose, that kind of thing. And then here's a page from my hands down all-time favorite, Anne of Green Gables. So this is a picture of Matthew bringing Anne home for the first time. And then there's even a blank page. So I was just trying to pick some pages that were representative of the kinds of books I loved. Picking out 2 flashcards because I love these old flashcards. I've always struggled with math, so I have picked out that 9 into 72 is 8, I believe, and 9 into 63 is 7, because for some reason those two mess me up. So I thought it'd be nice to have them in there. This was from a book. It's got some different quotes on it, which is something I've always enjoyed. Just always enjoyed good quotes, as you know. And so we'll be reading one of these in just a minute. Words, again, always had words, so I just picked out a page from a thesaurus. My love of Christmas, again, showing up here in these 2. This is just, I found this at the thrift store. It had the price sticker here, so I've got acetate over it until I cover it with something. Because my faith is important to me. This is a lovely picture. And then also this is actual wrapping paper from my childhood that I found in the bottom of a box when I was going through my doll collection so I could sell it. This is legit 70s wrapping paper. See, there's even got the little tape. So that is going in there because it represents my childhood and my love of Christmas. There's a little scrap. Along with the sewing, I wanted to pick out things that were kind of representative of the types of things I sewed, and I distinctly remember having a fabric that was very similar to this and making an outfit for myself. So this pattern, quintessential 70s, so I have that, and then also I have a book that is like a sewing system. So I picked out these 2 ladies. This like represents me again as a child, and I was always making dresses and pantsuits and stuff. This one just has the markings on it for like a pattern. And then this one talks about cross stitch and embroidery, and I included that because when I was 7, I went through a huge phase where I just wanted to know how to do embroidery, and so I did. I did needlepoint. I was 7. I remember that. I enjoyed it up to a point, and then I got bored, and I put it away, and I've literally never done embroidery or needlepoint again, but I should. It's still interesting to me. I took up cross stitch later in life, which you'll see here. I put in this organza bag because it represents the enjoyment with the fabric, tactile things, and also I just really love this bag, and every time I think about gifting, putting a gift in it, I keep it for myself. So now it can go in my journal. Love of office supplies here with pages from an old Greg steno notebook. And then along with the tactile and love of flowers and nature, I've got some handmade papers here. These are things that I have found at thrift stores and things. So I also included this because my favorite color is red. This is a darker red. My favorite color is actually more of a darker red. I've got this here because I just thought it was interesting and should go in a journal sometime. It kind of came out of a cube of diet soda. I just like the texture on it, so this may end up becoming the front cover on this journal. We'll see. I'm not sure quite yet. Love of old things represented here by this page from a reproduction Sears catalog. Love of travel. This came from my book from the lovely Izzy Sargent that she just randomly surprised me with, which was wonderful. So we enjoyed our trip to the UK, both times that I've been there now. So there's that on that side. Here's just travel in general is represented there. This I put in, it's from a doodling coloring book. I don't know if you guys remember, like in the 70s especially, there used to be these giant posters that came in tubes, and they were really detailed and intricate and had these massive pictures. The thing was probably, they were like 3 feet long and I don't know how wide, but they were huge, and you could just color for hours and work on that thing. Well, that's what this page reminds me of. And since I can't really put it in a journal, the person who owned it had already started coloring. I thought I'd put it in my book because it reminds me of those giant coloring posters. Here again, I did take up cross stitch later in life, after college and in my young adulthood. So this represents that, as does this, although I never really made any froofy pillows. My mom did craft shows for a short time, and she toll painted on pillows and sewed them, and they looked a little bit like this. So that incorporates the sewing and the cross stitch. Parchment, just a sheet of cardstock that looks like parchment because I've always thought parchment was cool. This is just a thick thing that came out of a brochure. I thought it would be great to put in a journal sometime. And I like that it says keep this in a safe place, because this is going to be a place for keeping memories. A lot of these pages here towards the back are thicker because I just think it's going to be good to have something with a little substance. This is half of a file folder, but I've always, back to the love of office supplies. You guys, it's a sickness, really. I've always loved these, and so I've used the other half on something, and so I thought, well, I can use this half in a journal for me. This is the back cover of a music book, so it's got some weight to it, so I just threw it in there. It represents the music again. This, that needs some trim. This is paper I recently found at the thrift store in a pack, and when I saw it, I thought of sewing, so I'm putting some in here to represent my love of sewing. I think this is the top side, but my sewing and early creative journey. Same with this. This is just a piece of scrapbook paper that I had found at a thrift store. I've coffee dyed it, but it has kind of that sewing vibe and colors. Here's the atlas in case I want to do more, take more pages out or do some decorating, like with the index pages, good for making envelopes, all of these wonderful map pages. So that is here in the pile. And then other random things, quickly trying to get through this. This I took out of the hymnal because I like this, so I may end up decorating a page with that. And again, it has music up there. Early childhood. This came off of a PBS catalog, and I'd torn it down to use for collage, but then I saw it and I thought, well, I grew up in Idaho, and so this represents Idaho. It says Outdoor Idaho. So those are the sawtooths. And this, I was born on a hot summer day in August in Idaho. So this represents the beginning of me. And this is a tag I made, but the colors and the flowers, the bright colors, just make me think of August. So there you go. More embellishments. Things for sewing to represent the sewing pages. Here's a zipper. Some fun little, closures. And then this is my actual tape measure from when I learned, or measuring tape from when I learned to sew. And as you can see, it's pretty beat up. So I had it set aside to use for decorating and sewing journals. But now that I'm doing this one, this will go in my own journal. So it's pretty ragged. It's lasted me a long time. This I found at a thrift store, but it's representative of the sewing, and I like the tactile, chunky nature, so it'll be decorating a page. Always loved plaid and argyle. It's just a scrap. Always loved this color as well. I have a lot of this still in my closet. I'm wearing it today, as a matter of fact. So these are just little things that represent me. And then I went through my craft cards, these old cards from 70s craft set. And I do have some in my shop, by the way. So if you see these and you think these are awesome, go check them out. But this, again, is representative of some of the things I might have made when I was little, and the colors and the style. So sewing. And then I found these on bookbinding. These were in there. So there's paper binding and cloth binding. So I might stuff these in a pocket to represent my current interests. And then love to grow my herb garden. I have books on herbs and stuff. I enjoy it. I don't actually ever make things like herb remedies, but it's representative of my herb garden. And then one of my creative endeavors was pressing flowers and making pictures out of them. So more things as ephemera. Represents the cooking, represents office supplies, love of flowers and office supplies and lists. Love to make lists. This has a pickle canning jar on it. More office supply love, and also representative of my birth month. A coin pocket. And then, because I loved taking pictures, remember I told you not too long ago that I had snagged these from a friend at one of our craft nights? So I pulled one out because I was always taking pictures as a kid, and I pulled out one that has more of that 70s vibe and some of the negatives that she gave me. And then also I pulled out a slide because my dad was always taking slides. So that was a big part of enjoying documenting things. I don't journal, but I like to document. I think that's my version of it. And then travel, represented by this random piece of junk mail, but I like the picture. I figured it would look good in a journal someday, so here it is. And more office supply representation. Love. This could be a pocket. This could be a tag. A sack, a pretty sack. Picture, kind of a, just the pattern on it just reminds me of being a kid again. And then this is just a scrap that was sent to me, and so even though it has the pretty birds on the backside, I really love this piece of paper. I don't know, I want to part with it. And it looks like a ledger, so there you go. That's very me-ish. So I just tucked it in there. I think those will be going in there. Also with the sewing, this is just tissue paper from fusible webbing that you use when you want to stiffen something up when you're sewing. So that'll decorate a page, as will this lovely, gorgeous violet purple doily, because I love doilies. And then this was just a random thing, also represents travel and our first trip to the UK 11 years ago. See, 2012. So I just thought, I haven't figured out what to do with it, and I just don't want to get rid of it. So I think it'll go in this book. Oh, and then last but not least, this recipe card, again, representative of the types of things I made as a young child learning to cook. And of, you know, my creative thing. The creative thing I got going on. Let's see. I like to stack these so that the things are flimsy are backed by something that's not. There we go. Except for this, which has nothing. So that, in a nutshell, is what I'm going to be including in the happiness category, or generally throughout the book. We'll just see how I use it. But my first foray into this adventure and into this first category, happiness. So I had hoped that I might work on that today a little bit, but I think just the amount of explanation took a little while. Now, how am I going to bind this sucker? Yes, I know you're asking that very important question. Lara also gave me some things, a big envelope of things to include and to decorate with. So I have a whole packet over here off to the side. I think book rings are going to be the best way to bind it. It's already a couple of inches thick just with the pages she sent me. So because of that, I'm not sure quite, you know, all of that stuff I just showed you may be too much for just the one category on happy, but I could intersperse them throughout, and I don't know how big it's going to be. So these are 2.2 inches, and as you can see, they may not be quite thick enough, especially by the time I get through. They're like fine for right now, but when I get through, it'll be thicker. So I may end up going back to Amazon and ordering some that are bigger. I just ordered these off Amazon ages ago because sometimes you need a bigger book ring, like now. All right, so that's how I plan to bind it. This is all the stuff, all of my thoughts, and it's going to be a really, really interesting journey. Speaking of journeys, let's chat a little bit about our trip to Alaska. We went on what's called the Inside Passage. So our stops in order, we left Seattle, we had a day at sea, and then we arrived the next morning in Juneau, Alaska. After touring Juneau, we went up further north to see the Hubbard Glacier. Then on the way back, Sitka, Alaska, Ketchikan, Alaska. Our final stop was Victoria in the evening. Tell you more about that in a minute. And then we arrived back in Seattle. So it was a full 7-day cruise, May 14th through the 21st. We went with our oldest daughter and her husband, Katie and Sam. This is the part of Alaska, when you look at the map of Alaska, that kind of trails down along the western edge of Canada. And so there are a lot of little islands in here. And so I learned that Sitka is on an island. Juneau is back up in like a little passageway. And then Ketchikan is also on an island. And then, of course, Victoria, Canada, BC is also an island. So mostly an island tour. It just was not tropical. So those were the stops. I'll try to show you pictures while I talk. First, you can see me embarking. This is a picture of me getting on. They have like photographers everywhere. So I happened to see them and I just gave them a nice big smile. And of course you can buy all of these pictures later on. And I actually like this picture, so I got it. Then my daughter got another one of all of us. They stop us in front of a backdrop like we're celebrities and took our picture of all of us. So it's Katie and Sam, me and my husband and my mom in this photo, and then also part of all of the bigger group were Sam's parents, Lori and Scott, and his sister Tessa and her husband Jeff. So there were 9 of us all together. So when we arrived in Juneau, we did a tour that took us up to the Mendenhall Glacier, which is interesting because I have a picture of the Mendenhall now, and then I have a picture of when Katie and my mom went. She was 14, so that was about 15 years ago. Them standing in front of the glacier, and I'll try to show you a comparison of the two. What it looks like now, we tried to recreate the shot, and then what it looked like then. It's not the best quality photo, but you can see how much the glacier has changed, which is disturbing. That's how much has melted off. So we saw that. The part of that tour, we also went to what's called Glacier Gardens, and that's the place where I told you there was an avalanche. Part of the hillside came down and the guy planted the trees upside down and has turned them into essentially like hanging baskets, but everything's in the trees. And then Sam did not go on that with us. He went, and his dad went on a seaplane exploration and flew over the glacier. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Really hot. Okay, we all packed our winter garb because we were told it's going to be cold, especially near the glaciers and on the boat and yada yada. So I had winter coats, layers, all the things. It was 80 degrees in Seattle when we left, and it was hot in Juneau. Now, it said it was only in the 60s, but let me tell you, it felt like it was mid 70s. So I don't know if it's just because the air is thinner. Like when you're up in the mountains, the air is thinner, so it feels hotter than it actually is, but we were hot and the bus was hot. The next day, we were completely at sea, and we cruised, went up to see the Hubbard Glacier. And that was absolutely spectacular. We actually did get to see some pieces breaking off, what they call calving. The folks on the ship were pronouncing the L, so they were calling it calving. So I don't know if that's like a regional way to say it, or anyway, like calf. It's birthing a calf. Anyway, calving. We got to see a couple of big chunks fallen off of the glacier into the ocean. Yes, that day we got to actually wear our winter coats, and it was beautiful. The boat got within a mile. That glacier is 7 stories tall, and then it is 7 miles wide, and it doesn't look that big from these pictures. We saw sea lions playing in the water. We saw some whales way off in the distance. You could see them blowing, but not really close to the boat. When we got there, our captain has to proceed very slowly. You know, it just kind of depends on the conditions and how the water looks. So we stopped within a mile, and I mean, we were there probably a good couple of hours. And what was the most astonishing to me is not just being in this gorgeous, beautiful environment, was that however many thousands of people were on this boat, a good number of us were out on the decks viewing it. What struck me was the silence. We were just absolutely silent. And all you hear are some birds, and then you hear the glacier, and you hear it popping. It's kind of like when you put ice in a glass. The ice starts to kind of warm up and it starts to pop, and then you pour water over it, and you know, it's kind of like that sound. It's ice popping and moving, and then right before it breaks off a piece, it sounds like thunder rumbling. It's called white thunder. Think about this. We've got, I don't know how many thousand people out on the decks staring all in the same direction. It's dead silent, and you hear the thunder, you hear the rumble and the crackling, and then we got to see a couple of little pieces break off. So that was spectacular. Makes a lot of noise. I'm zoomed in as far as I can go. Oh, listen to that. Oh, he's talking on the other side.
I see it. Cool.
Tiny bit.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that spectacular? So that was truly, truly amazing. The next day we went to Sitka, was our next stop. And at Sitka, we took a tour called The Best of Sitka, Otters, Raptors, and Bears. Almost all of these excursions guarantee that you will see a whale. I was like, wow, you must be very confident. Or they'll give you $100 back, which is quite a hefty amount. It started out with us going on a boat that just took us on like a boat tour of the coastline and some pretty places. And so we also saw otters playing. We saw 2 different kinds of whales. And I kind of fell in love with the humpback whale. I never thought I'd be a whale person, but here I am. I'm a humpback whale lover now. First thing, as we were heading out, there was a mama whale and a baby whale, and that little guy was just having the time of his life. He was showing off, and he was jumping out of the water and doing flips and twists. Every once in a while, Mom would surface. She would snort and blow, kind of like the sound of a horse or a cow when they're like huffing. Kind of. Anyway, she didn't really blow any of the water out of her air hole, but she did blow kind of like a, hey, be careful, you're getting too far, or don't go too far. Anyway, kind of like, you know, how moms just remind their kids not to get too rambunctious or rowdy or get lost. So she'd come up from time to time, but he was just playing. So here's some footage of him playing.
Did you just hear it?
Really great group of folks on that tour, leading the tour. Everybody's so knowledgeable. It was just really gorgeous. Again, just really beautiful. So we saw the whales playing, and we just had the best time watching the whales play. Then he took us over to a little inlet, gorgeous mountain. Can't remember the name of it, of course. And the sea was so smooth, you felt like you were on a lake. It was just so smooth and so clear. It really felt like being on a boat on a lake up in the mountains. It was absolutely gorgeous. Then he went around and he went to another little spot, and there was a gray whale there. And she comes and she just hangs out there. Usually the gray whales go further north, he said. This is her favorite spot. So he said they find her there year after year after year. So she came out to play, and she gave us some tail flips. And then circling back around, we got to see some sea lions and some otters. The sea lions were playing on this like buoy out in the in the ocean. They're all climbing on it and pushing each other off. Then we also got to see some otters playing in the ocean. There's all these little teeny tiny little islands, little dinky places, and on top of one of them was a bald eagle. He was just sitting up there. It was like he had come to get entertained for the day and just watch the otters play in the water. But we had a couple otters that would come and kind of follow along with the boat a little bit, so that was really neat. When they said that we were taking a tour of otters and stuff, none of us got the impression we were going to be on a boat, but we're super glad we were, because that was probably the highlight of our whole trip, really, was seeing the mama and the baby whale playing. Okay, so after we went on the boat tour, then we got on buses. And we had the nicest young lady who was our bus driver. Interestingly enough, almost everybody that is up there that you will see when you're touring does not live there. Most of the people that you're going to see are not local, and you think like, oh, I want to get the local flavor, but they get so many people that come in to work for the summer. And we got a real good taste of that because several of our bus drivers were people who were just coming for the summer. So we went to the Raptor Center and saw some demonstrations. Not quite enough time. I wish we'd had a little more time there because we didn't quite get enough time to walk around and look at all of the exhibits. I don't feel too bad because we have a Raptor Center here, so kind of the same, but they talk about how they rehabilitate the birds and let them back out into the wild. Then we went to the Bear Center that I mentioned that was does the same thing, rehabilitates or rescues bears. Most of them they can release back or send to zoos, but they do have a few there that cannot go back into the wild. So that was what we did there. And then the next day, we arrived in Ketchikan early in the morning at 7 a.m. I talked about how beautiful it is in the harbor, so I'll show you a picture here. And then we went to a lumberjack show, which honestly, it was one of the shorter tours, but it was actually really well done. So these guys come and they compete in these lumberjack shows. And then one of the guys that we saw in the show, we had actually just seen in one of the shops. We had a little extra time, so we were able to go in, scout out the shops for about 45 minutes before it was time to actually meet up with the tour because it was like 2 blocks from port, so it wasn't very far. And Katie and I were in one of the stores. We got on an elevator, and there's this young man who comes, and he looks like a high schooler. And I was like, oh, I held the door for him. He got in. 15 minutes later, we're at the lumberjack show, and he comes out. He's one of the lumberjacks. And Katie said she had noticed that he was wearing Disney pins on his jacket. So we think he does the lumberjack show at Disney and then comes up to Alaska and does it for the summer to earn good money. But anyway, very fun show, actually. Very well done. I was very pleased. Then we went on another bus, and this lady who is the bus driver is retired, and she and her 2 friends come up every summer and drive buses. So that's kind of her summer job, and it's what she likes to do. And so we went and saw a state park. It's called Totem Bight, B-I-G-H-T, State Park, and learned about totem poles and the people who live there and who made them. So we got to see the clan house, an example of a clan house. People would all live in this one big house, and then the totem poles tell stories, and they represent different things and different characters, but they kind of have similar characters, but then every once in a while they can kind of throw something else in that might represent something unique to the carver. I noticed though, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the colors in the harbor kind of echo the colors on the totem pole. So I don't know if there's the Ketchikan HOA Association or something, the Downtown Association for Ketchikan. Anyway, it was interesting because the totem pole colors and the harbor colors are very similar, but it kind of gave this unifying feeling of being in the area. So that was that. And then the next day we had at sea, and then we arrived in Victoria, and I'm sad to say that our time in Victoria was a little disappointing. There were predicted gale force winds of 30 miles an hour. We didn't dock until 8 p.m. They told us it was a 1-mile walk into town. It was more like 2.5. My mom was dying. The wind was picking up. It was cold. It was getting dark. We got our quintessential pictures of the Empress Hotel and then also the House of Parliament. We were only going to have 4 hours. We didn't plan an excursion. We wanted to just walk around downtown. But it was so crowded, and then my mom was just exhausted by the time we'd walked 2.5 miles into town. And so I said, there's no way that we are walking back in the dark 2.5 miles in freezing cold wind to our ship. So we got a taxi. All told, we were off the ship about 1.5 hours, completely miserable, so crowded everywhere. Katie and Sam found out the reason for that, and they had gone to some restaurant that they had heard about. They love poutine, and this restaurant is famous for its poutine, or I don't know, it was the home of the original poutine. I have no idea. They were in search of poutine, ready to go get some in Victoria. And when they came to the restaurant, they said, well, we're here. We were hoping to get some poutine. And the gal looked them dead in the face and said, we have no food. We are all out of food. We can get you something to drink, but we have absolutely nothing to serve you. She said 7 cruise ships had come in. The gal looked at him and she just said, "We got effed today." I'm like, she didn't say F. She said the actual word, but she was upset. She was tired. And I just thought, man, you know, you're in this port town, and yes, it's the very beginning of tourist season, but if you're just going to get wiped out every Saturday night, that's not fun. That's your home, you know? They were just wiped out. They had just been overrun, and we tried to go to a store and just kind of look around. People everywhere. It was the worst. We went into one store. I didn't even last 2 minutes because it was wall-to-wall people. Everything was crowded. Couldn't move. I was like, I'm getting out of here. It was terrible. So unfortunately, our time there was very disappointing, and I still need to go back and actually just see Victoria. So between the weather and the crowds and the long walk, it was a less than stellar visit. We didn't buy anything. I found one public restroom that I desperately needed, and it was so crowded. Two broken toilets and 2 without TP, so that left like 1, and we had to hold the door because the lock didn't work. And the hand dryer didn't work either. That was a public restroom. Anyway, and so we hailed a taxi. My husband just called and was like, "We need someone to come pick us up outside the Empress Hotel." And we called this taxi company, and we saw our taxi show up, and 2 other people climb in it, and he takes off. It wasn't even, anyway, very frustrating. So this other guy, another taxi service, he's got an empty taxi. He goes cruising by. We flag him down. We get in. We were like, yeah, that was supposed to be our taxi that just left. He says, it doesn't matter. We're all going to the same place anyway. We're just going to and from the ships. Well, we told him that we were a little disappointed that we didn't have very long, and then just how crowded it was. And he said, well, the ships don't even want to stop here now. After COVID, they really don't want to have to make a stop, but because they're in international waters, they have to. And so Victoria is the stop. And so they just do a brief stop, and then they go back to Seattle, which was a bummer. So in the past, like, 2019 and before, they used to spend a whole day there. And so it was a much more enjoyable stop. We went back to the ship. We saw the comedian. That was probably the best part of that whole stop, was watching him. Anyhow, so we're disappointed in Victoria, but it is what it is. Overall, the trip was awesome. You guys, I gotta show you. I have a sickness, and I have to show you some of the things I saved. You will understand me because you are my people. I just saved that receipt just because it's a nice size, and I liked, it's representative. These are our key cards. This is a tag I saved off of something because it says Alaska, the last frontier, which I thought was cool. And this also came off of something. Again, I thought this was like the coolest tag. I think it came off my husband's hat. He bought a hat. Oop, yeah. But it was really cool. These are little tags I saved off of my shoes, my waterproof shoes that I got, which turned out to not really be super necessary. I did use them a couple days. That was good. But for the most part, I didn't need waterproof. And then, interestingly enough, the time changes. So Alaska is 1 hour behind Pacific time zone. And so tonight the ship's clocks will move backward 1 hour, and your cell phone will not change because you're out in the middle of the ocean when this happens. They have to know. And then on the way back, when we got to Victoria tonight, the ship's clocks will move forward 1 hour. So I thought that was interesting, so I saved those. This is just a random plastic bag. They gave us this cute little phony passport thing from Holland America. So every time you sail with them, they give you this little cute little sticker thing that you can put in there, and then presumably you would continue to go and fill up your passport with all these cool things. Our captain, because it was Holland America, he actually is he is Dutch, and his name was Wouter van Hoogdalem. I can't say it right. Anyway, he was really nice. He gave a talk, and that was also very interesting to learn about how the ship runs and why he became a ship's captain. So yeah, it was. You kind of got a little flavor of Holland or the Netherlands while you're there. So that was cool. It made me think of Margaret over at Seven Plaza. I was like, oh, I'm in a extension of her country right now. But overall, it was a very good trip. Loved it. Would definitely go again, and definitely see more of the main part of the state. As long as it's not cold and snowing, because I don't do snow, but I can see the appeal. I see why people like it. Won't be moving there, but it was sure fun to visit. All right, guys, that is our chat for the day, our video for today. Got to wrap it up. I'm going to read you this quote that came out of one of those books that I'm going to include this as a page in my well-being journal. And it's about reputation. I think I've read something similar in the past. Good reputation. Just as the leaves of a tree are valuable, not merely for beauty's sake, but also as a shelter to the tender fruit, so a good reputation, if not in itself very important, is still very useful, not only as an embellishment of life, but as a protection to our virtues, especially to those which are weakly. Well, I didn't read that part in advance, so okay. Your good reputation protects what is important to you and your own values and virtues, and while it may not in and of itself seem like it's much, it definitely adds substance and value to your life. That's it for today. Hope everyone is going to have an awesome weekend, but I'll probably be pulling a few weeds this weekend and working on this journal, and probably doing some housework and stuff that I need to take care of. So that is a wrap for me. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend as well, doing something that you enjoy and that you get some good crafty time. So until next time, be inspired, do something creative today. I'll talk to you next Wednesday in the next video. Bye-bye now.